You're listening to From the Midlands, the stories of people making a difference across the region. Our presenter is Gail Downey.
Hello and welcome to From the Midlands. Joining us today is a woman who left school without any qualifications, set up an IT security business, started a charity and now owns Port Vale Football Club. Carol Shanahan, welcome.
Hello, and thank you very much.
Let's start with the football club first, because we are here in the grounds of Port Vale. Why a football club and why Port Vale?
Well, you can start with the football club, but you have to go into some of the other areas to understand why, really. And our IT company, we moved, we had 360 staff in 3 different offices. And we wanted to put them all together. And so we found the perfect office, which was an old supermarket, which had been renovated. And all the staff could fit in there, and it was next door to Port Vale. And it was also in Burslem, which is one of the northern 2 towns within Stoke on Trent. And when we moved here a number of years ago now, it was very obvious that the community really needed support. So it's very, very post-industrial. There was a lot of mines around here, the pottery industry, Dalton, Wedgwood, this was the centre of the pottery industry. When that went and the mines, so the pits and the pots went, there was nothing that came to replace it. So we're very, very high on the deprivation index. There's a lot of issues in the area socially, and social mobility is way down. And so I started to get involved in the community and just helping, really. It was very obvious that it needed help. And I was asked by our MP at the time whether I would help her by feeding kids during a school holiday, because she wanted some evidence to show that if most children during a school holiday will still have access to learning and food and everything else. So when they go back to school within a couple of weeks, they're back in September, they're back to where they were in July. The kids that we're talking about, many of them have no access to anything educational during the holidays and very little food. And so they can be October half term before they're back because of the support that they take from the school. So we started to offer food and activities during school holidays, which has been a really huge success.
And this was through your company, Synectics?
Well, this was just me and my PA, Ben, because she asked me if I would do it. And I mean, the reason that she asked me if I'd do it is that I had been put forward for a Businesswoman of the Year competition, and I got through to the national finals in Birmingham. And so I took a busload of women from Stoke to this lunch because it was a real nice day out and it was lovely. And I didn't win, which was fine because I hadn't put myself forward and we'd all had a lovely day. But one of the judges came up to me afterwards and said, "Look, I'm so sorry that you didn't win. You should have won." And I said, "Well, you were a judge. Why didn't I win?" And she said, "Well, because the woman who won has done a lot of work on health and safety on buses. So she's saving lives. So you couldn't compete with saving lives." To which I famously replied, "I didn't realise it was a Saving Lives competition. I thought it was a Businesswoman of the Year competition. So I'm not quite sure where that correlation is." And so I was laughing about this, you see. I thought this was really quite funny. And I was telling the group of women I was with, and this MP was so cross because she said, "That's ridiculous." And so she rang me after a few weeks and said, would I go to her house for tea on a Sunday? And I thought, if your MP phones you to go to her house for tea on a Sunday, and it's not to listen to songs of praise, is it? I mean, there's a reason. So I went along and she made me a lovely tea. And that's when she asked me, she said, "Look, I've been thinking about this, and okay, you couldn't compete with Saving Lives, but, it made me think that actually there's stuff that you can be doing and that's, on top of your work, which would really capitalise on the work that you started doing in the community. So that's why she asked me. So I didn't win the competition. I've always said if I won the damn competition, I wouldn't have got involved in all of this. But then this will circle back to Port Vale, I promise. But then the Department of Education were in town because Justine Greening was the Secretary of State for Education at that point, and she is very, very keen on social mobility and had started an initiative called the Opportunity Areas, which was putting £6 million into 12 areas in England that were cold spots for social mobility, and Stoke was right there on that.
So basically, if people were born poor, they stayed poor.
Yes. Yeah, and so there wasn't, your birth predicted your destiny sort of thing, whereas it doesn't elsewhere to the same extent. And so I went to some of the meetings, the scoping meetings they were having, and I went to one, and the civil servants who were running it came up to me and said, look, we need a chair. Would you chair? And they said, there'll also be Liz Barnes, who's the Vice-Chancellor of Staff's Uni. So Liz and I spoke about it, and we both agreed to do it. And so I became chair of the Opportunity Area with Liz, and they produced the first draft of their expectations, their delivery expectations, and it included building the holiday programme from the previous year. So I said, hang on, is this my programme? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, I'd stopped. And they said, no, you can't stop. No. But then I've been in a continual battle because I've said, right, okay, well, give me some money to do that. Well, then there's an issue because of your conflict of interest. Okay, so I'll stand down so I can do it. Well, no, because we need you to chair. Well, you've got to sort yourselves out. You either give me the money and I go and do it, or I stand down, or we just forget it. So it has been a robust process for us to get every single penny we've ever got. But we've done it, and we've just carried on. We've carried on just feeding kids. But it's not just the food, it's the activities, it's the socialisation, it's the whole sort of package. And so we've built that up. And so Kevin and I then...
Kevin's your husband?
He's my husband, yeah. So I said I really wanted to start a charity to do that, which is the Hubb Foundation, which is doing really, really well. And... but when we moved Synectics to the supermarket, old supermarket, is next door to Port Vale. And my predecessor had some real issues about the car park, because we've got a 450-place car park there. Real issues with the police and with the co-op on match days. So I thought, well, I've got to go and sort this out. And so I came to a match. I've got a good friend, Sue, who's a big Port Vale fan. And I said to her, look, I need to learn all things Port Vale. I need a Port Vale 101. And so we came to the next match, and we sat in the stands over the other side there. And I just fell back in love with football. I mean, just that first match, and it was amazing, and I loved it, and I loved being part of the crowd. And when I was a kid, I used to go to football on my own. I lived in West Brom, and I used to go to the Albion on my own, or if they played away, I'd go to Villa or I'd go to Wolves. And I was only a 9 and 10-year-old doing this. And I just loved that, being part of something that's bigger than yourself, that part of that community. And so I've been to every home match since, and most away matches since that day.
Hold on a minute. You're working, you and your husband run a company, Synectics. You're getting involved with the government, setting up various schemes, trying to get money for various schemes. You then set up a charity called the Hubb Foundation. Oh, and you also have 4 children with your husband as well. Where do you find the time?
Well, you find the best team that you can get around you. So Ben, my PA, is phenomenal, and he rules my life. And I could not do it without him. I couldn't have done that first summer without him. But then the reason I brought my board of directors over to Port Vale was that I trust them, I know their strengths, I know how good they are, and so I can leave them to do things and I don't have to be involved in everything. And I think this is what a lot of people do, is they become so afraid that then they're just involved in everything, and you can't be, you have to. I just have this thing about urgent and important. Is that urgent? Is it important? And if it's neither, don't do it.
So you had the Hubb Foundation, which, as you say, is helping young people and families in the city itself. You then decide to bid for Port Vale. I understand your first bid, 1.25 million, was turned down, and you had to go back and eventually bought it for 5 million.
Yeah, but it's more than that. But yeah, we tried to buy it 3 years ago because it was... I'd said to Kevin at one point, because, as I say, I used to go and watch football when I was a kid. I went to college in Lincoln, and it was at the time, and I lodged with a woman who did the laundry for Lincoln City at that point. I was 16, 17. And it was the time when Graham Taylor was the manager at Lincoln City. And they broke the record for the number of records broken in a season. It was phenomenal. It was just, but the whole city was alive. And people who didn't like football liked football. You know, everybody was involved. Everybody wanted to know. Everybody was part of it. So I said to Kevin, look, if we really, really want to help this area, we can't go and set pottery industries up again, but I said we need to go and make Port Vale successful. So we need to go and buy Port Vale. We need to make it successful, because then that positivity will permeate out, and we can capitalise on that community element of football, which the lower leagues have, far more than the higher ones. And so we bid for the club sort of 3 years before we got it, and we'd nearly got it, and then it didn't work out for a number of reasons. But I became chair of the Port Vale Foundation, so I was doing a lot of community work in the area through the community side, and I was happy to settle for that, really, at that point. And then we decided we weren't going to buy the football club, and that wasn't going to happen. So that's why we set the charity up, because we thought, well, we'll put money into that. And then we were approached by some Vale fans at an away match, and we said to them, because they were all protesting, and we said, look, if we can help in the background in any way, I said, I don't want to be in the foreground because I don't want to jeopardise the work that I'm doing in the community with the foundation, but if we can help you in the background at all, we happily will. And word must have got round, because by the time we left the club, after that match, there was a load of Vale fans there, and they came to us and said, look, we need an alternative offering, because we can protest and we can get him to want to sell, but we need somebody, the old chair, but we need somebody credible to buy it. And we were driving back home, and I just said, look, we just got to do this. And I said, look, this is far too much money for what we got. And our solicitors and accountants all just said to me, look, you can't do this deal, Carol, it's a terrible deal. It's a terrible deal. You cannot do this deal. But he had said that he would shut the club at the end of the season if it wasn't sold. So I let my solicitors and my accountants tell me all the reasons why it was a terrible deal, and they were right. I mean, I couldn't argue with them. But I listened to them for about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and then I said, right, okay, I'm not going. I said, you are my advisors. I pay you to advise me. I pay you to advise me on what risk I'm taking. I need to know. And you have done. You've done really well. I said, I'm now going to the loo, and when I come back, I'm going to ask Di on reception. It wasn't even my office. I said, I'm going to ask Di on reception to make us all a drink, and I'm coming back in, and then you're going to tell me how we do this deal in 8 weeks, because that's all we've got. And then I just put my head high, and I walked out, and I got in the loo, and I just shook. I thought, oh my God, what have I just done? But I did. I came back into the room, and we got a drink, and we started to do the plan of how we were going to do it in 8 weeks, and we did it in 8 weeks.
And you also can find yourself falling foul of the fans, can't you, if you're not spending enough money on players, if you've appointed a manager they don't like. It is a tough gig.
Yes, it is. And, when I first got here, I was very, very vocal on social media and, really wanted to be there for all the fans. But the way I look at it, and what's really sort of kept me going on all of this, is my youngest daughter has just finished a degree in theology, philosophy and ethics up in Manchester. And she said, she wanted to come and do some work in the club. And I said, but you don't like football. And she said, no, I know, but it'll grow on me. She said, but the thing is, I've learned about faith-based systems, and that's what this is. It's a faith-based system. And if you view it as that it is a faith-based system, and that you are here for those really important part of people's lives and deaths. So we've had a lot of fans that on their way to their final resting place will come into the ground. The hearse will come into the ground. Everybody who's here. I mean, if we had one today, you would be out there with me now. And we are silent. We give the person silence until the hearse drives off, and then we applaud them out of the site. And it's magical. It's humbling. It's fantastic. A phenomenal thing to be able to do. People get married here. They come here for their good times and their bad. So when the team is doing badly, that is them. That is part of their, this isn't rational. It isn't, it's a club that is absolutely embedded in the community. So when lockdown came and football was suspended, I got the leadership team together, the foundation, the Hubb Foundation, Port Vale Synectics, got everybody together on a Zoom and said, okay, how do we want history to write us? Because we can shut up shop, nobody would say a word, but we can make a difference. What do we want to do? And without hesitation and without exception, they just all said, we want to make a difference. We didn't know what we were going to do. But I was saying, well, look, come on, we're good at feeding people and we're good at activities. That's what we do. So we spoke to the council. We spoke to a lot of the schools that we work with anyway. And we furloughed the hospitality staff and the catering staff, but they all volunteered to come in and work on the community projects. They deep cleaned the kitchen. And then they started cooking, and they kept cooking, and they kept cooking, and they were producing 1,000 meals a day down there. The concourse was turned over into this whole area with freezers and trestle tables. It was a whole distribution point, and we delivered over 300,000 meals across the city, going through families, all the schools that we work with, and then more schools that we came on board, we would just say to their head teacher, give us the families that keep you awake at nights, because you know who they are. And so that's the way we got the families. Or through the council with the early intervention department there. So once they got a family that had a problem, before the council could kick in with a support package, we would be there. And then we would just sort of look after them. And then we found season ticket holders, particularly the elderly ones. We brought in a package together for loneliness. So we were ringing. I was delivering food on Christmas Day to the loneliness people who were on that. And some of them were saying to me, it's only Chloe that I speak to. She's the only person I speak to. And she rings me every Wednesday. And this has just become so important in their life because they couldn't get out. And so what we did at Christmas is we took the families that we'd worked with, and they all got kids, obviously. And we didn't want to be delivering on Christmas Day because we wanted the kids to have the whole experience of Christmas. So we delivered on the 23rd and 24th, all the food. But we also delivered all the kids' presents, and presents for the parents as well. But also things like a carrot and a mince pie for them to leave, and some reindeer dust for them to leave for Santa. So the whole Christmas experience, we put together crackers and everything, so that they had a Christmas, and then we delivered those. And then on the 25th, we delivered food and presents for the loneliness. Again, to me, that's what football's about. But I did start to get a little bit of comeback when we weren't winning, is, Carol's, more bothered about the food bank than she's on the pitch, and I'm not. That is not true at all. And it wasn't me doing all of that. Equally, it wasn't me getting it wrong on the pitch, So I mean, you see, but we go back to the faith-based system. It hurts them at a deep, deep level when their team aren't putting in a shift, aren't winning, aren't representing them in the best possible way.
So why have you decided to get involved in supporting people in this area?
I was born in Lincolnshire, near Skegness, middle of nowhere, middle of the wilds really, well the wolds, but in the wilds. And my parents separated when I was 6. My mum left. And this was 1963, I was born in 57, and it didn't happen. I mean, so I was the only child in my class from a broken home, as they were called then. And then when I was 8, so that's when I was 6, when I was 8, my mum then wanted me back, but she was in West Bromwich, because that's where her family had originated from. And so I went to live with her in West Brom, and so I was there in the school term time, but then I was with my dad back in Lincolnshire in the holiday time, and then sort of going backwards and forwards. So I had this very strange sort of duality really, where you were either sounding like a country bumpkin in the town, or you were sounding strange and sort of towny in the country. But it gave me 2 different perspectives on life. That's certainly where I got my love of football, because my mum ended up as secretary to one of the Albion doctors, and we lived on Birmingham Road. So at 9 and 10 years old, I would walk down the Birmingham Road and go and watch the Albion on my own. I mean, I would not let a 9 or 10-year-old girl through my turnstiles now, but that's what I used to do. And I loved it. And if the Albion played away, I'd catch the one bus and go and watch the Villa, or I'd catch the other bus and go and watch the Wolves, again on my own. And in retrospect, I think that was because I was very much a daddy's girl, and that was my way of connecting with my dad, I think. But it was also my way of belonging, that I felt belonging as part of the crowd. But then when I was a teenager, I went back to live with my dad in Lincolnshire. And I went to the local grammar school. I'd been in a comprehensive, because West Bromwich had turned comprehensive the year I went up. And there wasn't a national curriculum. There wasn't anything. So I got back to Lincolnshire. They put me in the grammar school. And everything was different. And I just lost it. I mean, I just never really caught up, never engaged. And I mean, one of my biggest talents was truancy. I was really good at truancy. So I left with nothing. And then I went to college in Lincoln, and that didn't work out. And I mean, everywhere I went to get an education, it just didn't work out. And so I got no O-levels, I got nothing. And I went to a friend of mine who worked in an agency, employment agency in West Brom, and I said, get me a job. And she's going through this Rolodex thing, looking at all these jobs, and she just kept going, no. And it was really annoying me, because I was going, oh, come on, one of these jobs has got to fit. And I said, come on, give us one that's you say no to. And she said, well, look at this one, for example. She says, they want a computer operator for a mainframe. They want 18, a man, because they could say. They want 5 O-levels, 2 A-levels, experience and a driving licence. I says, yeah, get me an interview. And she said, well, I can't get you an interview. She says, you're a woman, you're 17, you've got no experience, you've got no O-levels, no qualifications, and you can't drive. I said, well, if you're any good at your job, you'll get me an interview, won't you? So she did. I mean, she must have pulled in some favours, because there was nothing to recommend me. But I went in and I did this interview. It was 2 hours long. And I remember they said to me, because it was shift work, and they said, what would you do if it was 1 o'clock in the morning and one of the men made a pass at you? Honestly. And I just replied, I was really sassy. I just replied, what difference does the time make? Because, I mean, it just seemed ridiculous to me, And he went, oh, yeah, I suppose so. Anyway, I then had the second interview, and the regional manager came, and he said to this first one, he said, look, I'm with you. I've no idea why, but you've got to give her a go. And, so there was obviously something about me. And so that's what I did. I started, I was a computer operator. I was the first woman to be one for this large company. And I did what women often do. I tried to outman the men, so I drank more than them, I swore more, I smoked more. They had pictures of nude women up inside some of the cabinets, which you did in those days. And I said, no, this end cabinet's mine. So I put pictures of nude men up in there, And then one day I went in and I thought, why am I even doing that? It's ridiculous. So I sort of got rid of it. And I also started to dress like me again and, start being this whole masculine thing. But then when I was 40, we had a reunion at the grammar school. So I went along to that, and the deputy head, Miss Thomas, was at the door when we got there. And my dad always reckoned that Miss Thomas fancied him because she was always calling him to the school. And I said, she doesn't fancy your dad. He says, every week she's ringing me. And I said, she must fancy me. And anyway, I said to this Miss Thomas, I said, is Dr. Morris here, who was the physics teacher? And she says, no, he's ill, he couldn't make it. And I said, oh, that's a shame, because I finished my homework. She says, well, I'll let him know that miracles happen eventually. I thought, oh, God, we've not thought. But I saw the maths teacher, Mr. Windsor, and he said, how are you? What have you been doing? And we'd started synectics at that point. And I'd gone in Kevin's car because it was fancier than mine, and I wanted to, sort of show that I'd done all right. And I told him what we were doing, and he said, I always knew you'd do well. I said, you didn't. I said, you described me to the gutter. And he said, no. He said, you were walking a path and you were going to fall one way or the other. Whichever way you fell was going to be spectacular. But there was just something about you and you thought, no, she's going to be all right. She'll fall the right way. And that's what drives me. Mr. Windsor on that night drives me because I see kids day in, day out around here that walk in their version of that same path. And how can we help them to fall the right way? What can we do? Because there was something in me. It wasn't my parents' fault. I mean, it was circumstance. You can call it whatever you like. That was my journey. And what is their journey? So that drives me to help kids. And, and I did we lived in this council flat with my mum in West Brom. And we didn't have anything really. I mean, and she worked so hard and my dad worked so hard. And what drives me personally is just that I've got this sort of faith, this sort of sense of destiny. I mean, I feel that there's a destiny that I've ended up in Port Vale because you look at it, you think, oh my goodness, all the experiences I've had through the years have brought me to here. Even to a point that my childhood was half in Lincolnshire in the countryside. Now I live in a town 10 miles, I know how much it is because I walk here on a match day. It's 14 miles away down the canal towpath. And it's so country and it's so like the town that I grew up in, and you go out and you walk in this amazing countryside just like Lincolnshire. And then I come to work and I'm in Burslem and it's just like West Bromwich back in the day. And so it's my life still has that element, that duality that I had as a child. So I was born to this is what I was, and I genuinely do believe this is what I was meant to do. That's what drives me is everybody being able to do their own journey, and for it to be successful in their terms, because success isn't the same to everybody. And it really annoys me while I'm on a rant when people talk about social mobility and they say, it's about getting people out of council estates. It isn't. Council estates are amazing. They are wonderful. The communities that we work in the council estates of this city are phenomenal. It's making that estate, that community, to be the best that it can be, and it's bringing support in there, and it's giving hope where there isn't hope, and it's making it okay. It is fine, so that's what drives me.
And as for Port Vale itself as a football club, where do you want to see it going? Where do you think it will go? What are your hopes for the football club?
Well, I'm 63 now, and so I've said to my board and my leadership team, I want the choice when I am 70 to walk away. I'm not saying for a second I'm going to take that choice, but I want that choice. So I want, in 7 years' time, for us to be a successful, sustainable, impressive club. And we will have to go up the leagues. So I don't put a time on when I want promoted, but I would like to be in the Championship by the time I leave, or have the option to leave. I would like us to be the best community club that we can be. I'd like people to be able to say, Port Vale helped me. So I've signed over the social club building and the old academy building to our foundation, our community foundation, so they can both be community buildings. So we run a food bank from there, we run all our support from there. But if we've brought a family in and helped them, whether it's adult education to help the parents, because a lot of parents really struggle on helping their kids with schoolwork because they didn't do it. And their whole feelings about school is so negative and traumatic for a lot. So we offer adult education. So we'll look after your kids, and whilst they're doing their activities and everything, we'll do some courses for you. And you give them the certificate at the end of that. And it's, for some of them, it's the first positive thing that they've ever had from education. And you think you're giving them a PhD in astrophysics, and it's an hour and a half doing first aid or something. But they were there, oh, wow, I did that, So I'm very keen on teaching how to cook. So we've been doing a scheme on giving slow cooks away, but we prepare the veg for the first 3 weeks so that they ease in gently. We give them beautiful recipe cards so that they can learn how to do that. So I'm keen on doing that and just giving people opportunity. I think that's really what I want. But I just want Port Vale to be the best it can be.
Carol Shanahan, thank you very much.
My pleasure, thank you.
You've been listening to From the Midlands, a Whirlwind production. If you've enjoyed listening and would like to sponsor this series of podcasts, details are available on our website at fromthemidlands.co.uk.